In this episode of Satansplain, I'll be answering some listener mail on a variety of topics, including satanic ritual, lingual translations of satanic works, Church of Satan membership, expectations on meeting fellow Satanists, and finishing with an essay of mine on different crowds found at this great party we all call the Church of Satan.
Well, it's not Satan worship, it's Satanism. It's embracing the life-enriching things which have traditionally been given the devil's name. Pride, lust, earthly success, rational self-interest, atheism, humor, nonconformity, science, a passion for living, being selective about whom we love. We don't see these as shameful sins, but empowering ideals. And we also recognize the psychological power and fun of symbolism and aesthetics, so we utilize Satan as mythology's most fitting mascot for what we're about.
Satansplain, Satanic Talk with Church of Satan Magister Bill M.
Magister Bill M. here with Satansplain. I'm going to read some listener mail on a number of topics: Radio Free Satan, the Infernal Names, and other ritual questions, translations of satanic works to other languages, the expectations of meeting other Satanists, dealing with them, and I'll be finishing with a small essay I wrote in 2020. Here we go. This first email is from Gam. Gam writes and asks if there was any Radio Free Satan merchandise. Well, I wrote back to her and I said, unfortunately, no. Radio Free Satan launched in the year 2000, and since then, there have certainly been merchandise sold here and there. I own a few Radio Free Satan t-shirts myself. There was one year we even put together a compilation CD. We had DJs each pick favorite tracks of theirs that were representative of the shows that they did, and put that out and gave that away at, I think, an anniversary party. But unfortunately, at this moment, as far as I know, no, there is no Radio Free Satan merch store. You can go to the Satansplain merch store. You can go to store.satansplain.com, and that will redirect you to a store where I do have, among other things, Satan Bear merchandise, Satan Bear from the Devil's Mischief. In fact, this past June 6th, speaking of Radio Free Satan, well, that marked 25 years of Radio Free Satan, and I guess we were just too busy to notice and do anything to commemorate it. Oh well. Let's move on to the next email. Eric says, I've been doing research into the Infernal Names to find greater usefulness to their purpose in psychodramatic ritual. In earlier editions of the Satanic Bible, Anton LaVey did not include any descriptions in the list, while the 2005 edition with the introduction and annotations by Magus Gilmore did include descriptors. My question is this: where the descriptions given in the 2005 edition differ from what historical evidence suggests? Is it important or relevant to prioritize one over the other? So just to pause the email right there, I told Eric that I don't know what he's talking about when he says there were no descriptors in the list, because in the Satanic Bible, you can find the Infernal Names listed, and they're listed twice. They're listed in the Book of Lucifer and then again in the Book of Leviathan. And in the first instance of those two, in the Book of Lucifer, there are short descriptions next to each infernal name. Now, the 2005 edition of the Satanic Bible is no different. The older introduction to the book was replaced by an updated one from Magus Peter H. Gilmore, who has been the Church of Satan's high priest since 2001. But outside of that introduction, the book is word for word just like any other edition of the Satanic Bible, really. In fact, the only differences I think that have ever been changed with different editions of the Satanic Bible was that there was originally a dedication page, and that got removed out of some confusion as to what was going to be removed. But that got removed, and there were different introductions that other people wrote in some other editions. And that's it, though. Again, it's still word for word the same in the Satanic Bible, including that list of infernal names with descriptors. So maybe Eric is just confusing the list in the Satanic Bible without the descriptions with the one that does have the descriptions. Anyway, Eric goes on to ask about some of these brief descriptions, like, okay, the book describes Astaroth as a Phoenician goddess of lasciviousness, But then some historians are saying Astaroth is a demon appearing in occult and esoteric works and was named after a different being in Phoenician mythology called Astarte. Is the Phoenician goddess of lasciviousness the function in the calling of Infernal Names because it's described as such in that edition? And Eric goes on with a couple of more examples like this and asks if he's overthinking it. And I would say, yeah, Eric, you kind of are. Because, I mean, forget for the moment about Satanism and the Satanic Bible. If you take almost any god or goddess or demon or whatever from mythology, and you ask 5 different scholars what concepts that being really represented to people, you're going to get 5 different answers. I've seen this from time to time on Wikipedia, where you'll be looking at a page for one of these mythological characters, and you click over to the talk tab where people are arguing, well, the notion that this god represented destruction is debatable because I have this link from a historian who argues that the worshippers associated him with grain harvesting as well, and they seem to especially do that if they're afraid of some particular pagan deity they like might have an evil reputation. But I talked more extensively about the Infernal Names back in Satansplain episode number 74. Obviously, as Satanists, we don't believe these deities to really exist. So for somebody to try to argue that one name or another in the list might be too caricatured in one direction, I say, who cares? If the description and common impression of a particular name in the list fits the theme of the ritual you're doing, then I would argue that that's all that really matters. So again, see episode number 74 of Satansplain for more of my thoughts on this. Speaking of translations, I have an email here from Yasha, a Satanist from Germany. He says that he has read the Satanic Bible in both the original English version and the German version. He says, quote, as my understanding of the religion got better, partially through your great podcast, which has helped me a lot, I reread the book in the German translation and noticed some interesting choices of words in there that could, or in my opinion do, change the meaning of certain sentences into something less satanic. If you were to ask me, and a fellow German Satanist I know for that matter, here is an example. The first satanic statement, Satan represents indulgence instead of abstinence. Well, that gets translated into German like this. Satan bedeutet Sinnesfreude anstatt Abstinenz, which is a weird choice of words if you ask me, because Sinnesfreude means something more like sensual delights or sensual pleasures. There is, of course, nothing wrong with sensual pleasures, but it certainly does not have as strong a meaning as indulgence, which I would translate with the German word Genuss. And I would argue there are things that you can indulge in that have nothing to do with sensual pleasures, like pride. There's nothing physically stimulating your senses when you're proud of something, and we embrace indulging in pride. Okay, so Yash goes on from there, but to pause his email at this point for a moment, this is unfortunately one of the problems with translating any book between 2 languages. Sometimes there's a word for a concept in one language that really doesn't exist in some other language, or the word that is said to fit doesn't quite capture it 100%. In fact, I would argue that Yasha's use of the word indulgence here with pride doesn't quite work. You can embrace pride, and you can indulge in particularly prideful things, I suppose, but that comes back down to individual pleasure. So I don't really know if I agree with the grammar of phrases like indulging in pride. That seems to kind of go beyond the scope of what indulgence means within the context of the first satanic statement. But I don't know. Maybe some others disagree. Now, Yash asks if I know of any German members of the Church of Satan who have commented on this translation or had something to do with it. Also, do we have any influence on who gets to translate the book? Well, I pointed out to him that the Satanic Bible and Satanic Rituals are books published by HarperCollins Publishing. The Church of Satan is not a book publisher. The book publisher is the book's publisher. And as book publishers, they essentially have the ultimate say on what to do. The living heirs of Anton LaVey also have some say, which, as I understand, is one of the reasons why there's been such a holdup on authorized digital ebook versions of the Satanic Bible. Likewise, I remember that there was a Spanish version of the Satanic Bible that we really had no control over. Having said all that, there have been times when Church of Satan members got to overlook translations of satanic literature in a more diligent way. For example, the Spanish version of the Satanic Scriptures was done that way. There is also a German version of the essay book that I'm in, A Satanic Life. And that, as I understand it, was translated with better care in mind. Next email here. Some time ago, I got an email from somebody who asked if the Church of Satan was doing anything for June 6, 2060. I said, well, that would be much too far away. He clarified later on that he meant June 6th, year 60 Anno Satanas, not 2060, the Gregorian calendar. He said he meant the date being the 60th anniversary of the Church of Satan. Well, a few things here. First of all, I don't know if this was the same anonymous user I had referred to as Arnold a few episodes back. I think I got two similar emails from different people, but Arnold, if you're listening, I keep trying to email you back, but every time I do, the emails I send come bouncing back, so I have no idea what's going on with your email address or how you're sending me these emails, but you may want to look into that. Second of all, June 6th in the year 60 Anno Satanas just passed not too long ago. 2025, remember, is the year 60 Anno Satanas. This year is not the 60th anniversary of the Church of Satan. That happens in April of next year. As I keep reminding people, the year 1966 was year 1 Anno Satanas. It was not year 0. And we changed the year number on January 1st, not April 30th. So 60 years after the founding date of the Church of Satan would be April 30th, 2026. And that is in the year 2026, which means it's in the year 61 Anno Satanas. But anyway, is the church doing anything to commemorate that? Oh, yes, we definitely will be. And that is all I'm going to say about it for now. I've got an email from CM who says, Magister Bill M., I am a huge fan of Satansplain. I've listened to almost every episode. I've considered myself Satanist for many years. Though, as you might have gathered from that, I've yet to officially register as a member of the Church of Satan. That is long overdue. If I'm being honest, I never used to consider myself religious, even while identifying with Satanism. But over the past couple of years, I've grown increasingly dedicated to the literature of the Church of Satan. It's provided me with a clear framework by which I live. It sharpens my principles and allows me to express myself both honestly and confidently. In contrast, before discovering the Satanic Bible, I was navigating life rather loosely without a consistent perspective or philosophical grounding. Suffice it to say, I've transitioned into the religious dimension of Satanism and will be registering as a member very soon. I am currently in the process of relocating, but once I'm settled, I intend to make that formal commitment. I recall you mentioning this in a past episode, but I can't remember the specifics. Can one register as a member and apply for active membership at the same time? All right, so there's more to the email, but just to pause it right there. I told CM, thank you very much for listening to the show, and I said I'm glad he has found it helpful. Also, always excellent to see a Satanist who's made the decision to join the Church of Satan. And yes, you can optionally send in your active membership application when you also send in a standard registered membership fee. I've seen lots of Satanists do it that way. The other option, of course, is to just get a registered membership and then later file for active membership if you wish. You can read more about the details of all this on churchofsatan.com. Go look for the section called Affiliation. And finally, just a comment on the word religious here. Yeah, I myself have no problem saying that Satanism is a religion, and that as a person who identifies as a Satanist, I would therefore consider myself a religious person. One of the reasons for this is I don't really like the exact opposite approach, where people try to eschew the word religion because, quite frankly, I've seen all other sorts of religions do that, and to me it just comes off as pretentious and solipsistic. You'll hear, for example, a Christian say, "Oh, I don't have a religion, I have a relationship with Jesus Christ." Or, for that matter, some other Christian might say, "Oh, I'm a Mormon, but Mormonism isn't really a religion, it's really more like a way of life." Or a Jew may say, "Oh, well, Judaism is not really a religion, it's a covenant with the Almighty." So, I mean, to me, these lines just sound like somebody who doesn't want to accept the fact that their chosen religion, which most likely is the religion they were raised under, is just one of hundreds of options out there. And it goes to such ridiculous lengths, too. I've seen people say, "Oh, I go to a church and I believe in the Bible and I also pray to Jesus, but no, I don't have a religion." Yes, you do. That is the word we have in the English language to describe things like that. From a satanic standpoint, though, I am amused to see so many Christians over the past 20 or 30 years finding the word religion to be so ugly that they shun it themselves. So many people like to describe themselves as, spiritual but not religious. And, well, as a Satanist, I describe myself as religious, not spiritual. See Satansplain episode number 42 for more on that. But let's get back to this episode. Let's get back to CM's letter. CM goes on to say, "The idea of engaging with other members is intriguing, though I'll admit to being a bit hesitant. In my experience, some Satanists I've interacted with lean a little too hard into theatrics. I appreciate drama and flair when appropriate, but it feels forced or exaggerated. Well, when it feels forced or exaggerated, it comes off as disingenuous. On the other hand, I've encountered Satanists who seem to treat the philosophies far too loosely, ignoring the very clarity that makes it powerful. The Satanic Bible isn't ambiguous, and to me, there's little room for wide interpretation beyond some ritual improvisation. Perhaps formal membership will help me connect with others who share that approach." Okay, and to pause the email again, just to clarify, joining the Church of Satan is no guarantee that you'll be meeting up with other members in person. There are certainly opportunities for that, but joining the Church of Satan is no guarantee that you'll get to meet other members in person, because quite frankly, how could we guarantee that as an organization? Satanism is not a congregational religion. This is not a religion that requires weekly attendance in a building somewhere. I talked a while back in another episode about some guy who lived in the middle of Ohio and said he would not join the Church of Satan unless there was a guarantee of some activities going on within a reasonable driving distance from where he lived. Well, what does he expect us to do? Does he expect us to round up all of our members who are in Ohio and say, "Okay, cancel your plans for this weekend. I want you to set up an event and hang out with this total stranger"? No, he's not going to do that, because that would require telling Satanists how to personally spend their free time, and good luck telling a Satanist to do that. Why would we subject our members to do that? I told this guy, again, not CM, but the guy from Ohio I talked to years ago, if you lived even in the same town as me, why would I want to go out and meet you? You haven't even said anything about yourself, and I don't know you. And frankly, you sound like a whiner. But getting back to CM's email, I said that when it comes to meeting other Satanists, yes, I've certainly met some who seem to be heavy on the aesthetics. We have a term called Phase 1 Satanism, and that refers to the mindset of some Satanists who are maybe way too overly focused on the blasphemy and the ritual aspects of Satanism, and maybe ignoring all other parts. I mean, the parts do still have their rightful place, but there's a reason why the Satanic Bible is more than just a page or two long. However, I must say that whenever I've gone to gatherings by other Church of Satan members, most of these Satanists I meet never seem to be like that at all. They're not acting or looking so over the top that, as CM says, it comes off as disingenuous. Even the few that might have looked that way at first glance ended up being surprisingly down to earth. Now, obviously, in the Church of Satan, you're not expected to get along with each and every other member. But in general, I have to say that when I'm involved in Satanism-related events or meetups or projects and so on, and they were restricted to Church of Satan members only, that restriction greatly filtered out the loonies who call themselves Satanists but just don't get it. So one of the many benefits of membership, I would say, not to mention a reason for having the Church of Satan itself. Those of you who are Satanists and get it, well, we're all over here. It's like, have you been on an internet forum that's called a Satanism forum, but it's filled with a lot of clueless people, ranging from devil worshippers to pathetic sanctimonious activists of Kevin Solling's club to death metal fans who can't even draw a pentagram pointing the right way? But then you go to some other Satanism forum that's actually moderated by Satanists, and that filters out the loonies who don't get it, or the people who just spam a bunch of unrelated pictures, and because of that filtering, you're finally able to have some good satanic conversations with fellow Satanists. Well, imagine that, what I just said, but imagine it in real life. To me, that's what hanging out at events limited to COS members only is like. There's a great filtering process through that. The bullshit of the herd is filtered out, and, it makes way to enjoy a night with the grown-ups. I'll expand a little more on that at the end of the episode when I read you my essay. And to finish up CM's email, quote, "Lastly, I have a question regarding lesser magic and rational self-interest. I consider myself a compassionate person, and I often go out of my way to help those I know personally. These are people I trust will reciprocate, and who have proven themselves deserving of that trust. But I also tend to do small, courteous things for strangers, picking up a dropped item, letting someone with a few groceries ahead of me in line, that sort of thing. I don't see these small acts as contradictions to satanic ethics, but I'm interested in your take on how much gestures, well, not sacrifices, fit into the realm of lesser magic or rational self-interest. They're not done to manipulate or gain, but neither are they detrimental. They seem ethically neutral, yet I wonder if there's a satanic lens through which they're more or less meaningful. Thank you for all that you do. I also appreciate your work on The Devil's Mischief. Your blend of comedy and insight is always a treat." Well, thank you again, CM. I told CM that as for courtesy and so on, I don't think there's anything anti-satanic in that. Courtesy is not the same thing as servitude. In fact, I talked a bit about that pretty recently in Satansplain episode number 92. I can certainly see lesser magic applications with that as well. When people see you're not a threat, they may be open to do things they might not otherwise be open to doing for you. And I see many Satanists who seem all too quick, on the other hand, to say, well, I don't care what anyone thinks of me. And to that, I always say, well, as a Satanist, I certainly care what some people think of me, especially in some situations. That's kind of what a lot of lesser magic comes down to. Now, obviously, I'm not talking about mass approval or catering to the wishes of everybody you run into in life. There's certainly nothing satanic about that, but there's also nothing satanic about a cop pulling you over on the highway for a broken taillight and saying, I don't care if that cop thinks I'm a wild, demented serial killer. I don't care what people think of me. No, if I was in that kind of a situation, I myself would want that kind of encounter to be over as quickly and courteously as possible. I'm not looking to get tased or beaten with a baton for needlessly being perceived as a threat. Again, there are reasons why the 9 satanic sins include things like counterproductive pride, and solipsism. Next email here is from Richie. Richie says, I have a question regarding ritual. I'm going to perform a compassion, a destruction, and a dedication to Satanism ritual, and I'm wondering, should these rituals be 3 different acts of solitary ritual, as in treating each one as its own ceremony? Or is there not any issue to follow the 13 steps, then perform all 3 rituals in any order, then close out the ritual? I know there are no rules, so to speak, in ritual, but I'm very formal and theatrical with it, very primal, so I like the formalities, at least for now. Thank you in advance. Well, I wrote back to Richie and said that I really think it's best to do what he described as 3 separate rituals rather than trying to do one with the whole thing. I mean, I can see doing compassion and maybe doing the dedication ritual, or doing destruction and the dedication ritual. You know, you start off with the dedication and maybe go into that. But even then, if a particular desire is important enough to you, enough to want to get a ritual going in the first place, I would say it's probably best to do that in such a way that you can dedicate your full attention and energy to that. And when I say energy, I'm not claiming there's some kind of supernatural force at work here, you know, like you have some kind of quantifiable mana level, as if you're in the video game Diablo or playing Dungeons and Dragons or whatever. No, I mean energy as in your own physical and emotional stamina. Let's say you set up to do a conjuration of compassion, and you're doing the visuals and pouring everything into your gut into this, and by the end of it, you're just spent, you know, which is pretty normal in those cases. You've come to a climax, so to speak. Is all of this over? Do you think at that point you can then turn to another topic, like maybe lust or destruction, and build up the necessary feeling and release that just the same? No, maybe you can. Maybe you can do both. But again, if you're asking for my suggestion, I would say that it makes more sense to just do these things in separate rituals. Now, having said all of that, I do know it is certainly possible to incorporate the 3 conjurations from the Satanic Bible. I know it wasn't quite what this user asked for, but it is possible to combine those into a single satanic ritual. And the reason I know this is because back in 2006, we, the Church of Satan, used the date of 6606 as an excuse to do a ritual out in Los Angeles called the 6606 High Mass. And that ritual did manage to weave the conjuration of compassion with the conjuration of lust and conjuration of destruction into a single ritual. And you know what? Somehow it worked. It just flowed really well. The performers managed to somehow, weave those things together and make it flow from one to another. However, I think the reason that worked in that case had a lot to do with the fact that they were all put into a context that was a little more ceremonial than ritualistic. What I mean is it was more of a psychodramatic ceremony for the entire audience, not 3 conjurations used as somebody's personal desires to target 3 specific people, say. Let's take a break right now. When we come back, I have one more email to read and then a little essay to share with you as I offer a metaphor for what the Church of Satan is like, especially in this day and age of cancellation and tribalism. Stay tuned. You are listening to Satansplain.
You are listening to Satansplain, real satanic talk with Church of Satan Magister Bill M. For questions, comments, and correspondence, send an email to bill@satansplain.com.
The Metro with your host, Reverend Jeff Ivins, where I play post-punk, new wave, and other hits from the 1980s. Get it at radiofreesatan.com. Hail Satan.
Handmade, all-natural, botanical perfumes, soaps, and ceremonial incense, sculptures and jewelry to adorn yourself and your other altars. All this and more await you at moonandsunemporium.com. ritual perfumes, and other occult fine art luxuries, created and curated by me, Priestess Sarah Josephine Clark, with tarot readings by Reverend Dr. Dylan Clark. moonandsunemporium.com.
Magister Bill M. here with Satansplain. Visit the main website for the show at satansplain.com. There you can find every Satansplain episode. You can also listen to Satansplain on Spotify, YouTube, Audible, and a host of other places. If you are on social media, please give Satansplain a like and a follow, or whatever the equivalent is, on Facebook, X, and YouTube. Likewise, if you're listening now on YouTube, please don't forget to hit that like button for this episode. For all questions and correspondence, email me directly. The email address is bill@satansplain.com. And if you enjoy Satansplain and would like to show your support for the show, please go to the show's page on Locals. Point your web browsers to satansplain.locals.com. You can sign up for Locals for free, but you can also additionally become a paid subscriber there. That is the best way you can support Satansplain. Though we also have a merch store. You can go to store.satansplain.com for that. I mentioned that a little earlier in the episode. But in any case, thank you, as always, to all of you who support Satansplain in one way or another. As you regular listeners of Satansplain already know, I like to include a satanic anecdote now and then. Usually these are personal stories sent in from you, the listeners. But this time, I'd like to offer one of my own. So here is my satanic anecdote, or as we call them for short, Satanecdotes. Cue the Satanecdote theme song.
Satanic anecdotes. Satanecdotes.
As some of you out there already know, I am a musician, and I like doing solo performances at coffee houses and the like. Well, not too long ago, I was playing an outdoor summer event on a stage in the common areas of this small town. So there I am in this really, really rural town, wholesome summer event. There are families with, having a picnic, and there are children and policemen and firemen. There are tents selling pottery and chicken knick-knack statues, and from this whole grassy area, I could see even 3 or 4 churches along the road. So this gig that I'm playing was slated for 3 hours. And I have no problem filling in 3 hours with the hundreds of different songs that I play. And so I'm playing some oldies. And I think, you know what? While this audience is listening to this and is happy with it, let me slip some tunes by these people. And I sneak in the 1920s song Yankee Rose. I play Old Devil Moon. I play Irving Berlin's Tin Pan Alley song He's a Devil in his own hometown. I even sneak in an instrumental version of Anton LaVey's The Hymn of the Satanic Empire. And while I'm staring down this church that's in front of me in the distance, of course, the audience is enjoying what I'm playing. It's, just to them, they think, oh, this is just more of that old-timey music in the background. Whereas for me, I'm thinking, if they only knew. But, the fun continued after that when the coordinator of the event complimented me on my performance and asked if I knew any Tom Lehrer. I said, yes, I definitely do. I love Tom Lehrer. So I did 2 Tom Lehrer songs, and I was also invited back by this coordinator to play again later in the summer when they do another one of these. I also got the most money in tips I think I've ever gotten from a single performance. And that was in addition to what I was paid directly for doing the gig. So anyway, there is my summer fun Satanecdote. Let's get back to some listener mail, and then I want to finish with an essay I wrote back around 2020. Colin writes, happy to say hello, Magister Bill. Love your show. I'm hoping to get your opinion on this recent essay I wrote and perhaps have it be decent fare for your show. I think that in our modern day, wokeism is turning into a new secular religion. I was hoping that you might weigh in on what I bring up here. I don't aim for this to be some political diatribe about how being left or right deserves some kind of satanic rebuttal. Satanism is not and never will be a political entity. I only aim to show how there is seemingly a new religion on the block that has yet to recognize itself. Much of it mirrors how the early Christian church behaved when it was rising to power in the Roman Empire. Suffice to say, if you think I'm full of crap, perhaps you could enlighten me so that I can be better informed. I also want you to know that this is not a response to any of your episodes. I don't have an official membership yet, just waiting for funds to free themselves up. Cheers, and hope you find something interesting in the least. If not, roast me for my poor writing. Either way, should be a fun experience. So that was Colin's email. I'm not going to read you his essay, not because I disliked it. In fact, I actually did like it very much, but instead I want to mostly stop and compare this email to the one I responded to in the previous episode. I've talked many times about politics and Satanism, and I'm going to state it again. The Church of Satan does not embrace any particular political ideology or political party or politician. Why is this? Well, Satanism is a shamelessly selfish religion. It's a religion that puts the self above the collective. But even though all Satanists by definition adhere to the philosophy of Satanism, which you can find described in the Satanic Bible and the like, well, the reality is that we Satanists are different individuals. You'll find Satanists in different economic brackets, different careers, different races, different sexes. Some Satanists are younger, some Satanists are older, some have children, some Satanists don't have children. Some Satanists are married, some are single, some live in the city, some live in the country, and so on and so on. And because of all these differences, gee, wouldn't you know, not all Satanists share the same priorities. The issues that are important to me might not be the same issues important to you. The political convictions or political solutions that seem to best serve me might not be the ones that serve you best. There are some Satanists who are quite left-wing in their politics, and there are Satanists like me who are just as right-wing. And, of course, there are Satanists who fall anywhere in between or on a different axis of the political compass entirely, for that matter. Some are decidedly apolitical. Some Satanists are like that. They see everything about politics as being a meaningless game, and voting doesn't matter and all that. And that's their prerogative as a Satanist if they want to have that view. But occasionally I'll run into some Satanist who doesn't seem to grasp this whole concept on both the political left and the political right. I've seen it happen in both extremes. And in both cases, they'll say something like, well, I vote for this party and not that party, and I can't imagine why any Satanist would vote differently than me, because the party I hate has views A, B, and C, which are all bad and totally unsatanic. So how could any Satanist vote for that party or call themselves that? Okay, well, my answer to all of that is, how about you find a Satanist who politically identifies that way that you find so strange and talk to them. Ask him or her why. Why do they feel a satanic connection with that? Why do they feel it's not a contradiction to be a Satanist and vote this particular way or whatever? And maybe you can be polite enough to listen to their answers without interrupting them or automatically assuming the worst about them. Is it as simple as, well, they're misinformed and I'm not misinformed? Maybe. Maybe they really are misinformed and you really are smarter than them. Maybe they really have not heard the arguments that you were about to present to them. But maybe not. You won't know until you ask, let alone listen. And if you don't care what their reasons are and don't want to listen, okay, but then don't jump to conclusions about why you think they believe what they believe. Simply put, it is a logical fallacy to say, well, I reject proposal A because I think it would lead to bad outcome B. Therefore, anybody who supports A must be doing so because they want bad outcome B. Solipsism is one hell of a satanic sin. But compare that email I just read from Colin to the email in the previous Satansplain episode from Jordan. By the way, it seems that I misgendered Jordan. I presumed Jordan was a man because you never really see women try to make those kind of angry, supposedly logical debates with somebody to create and win an argument themselves. That's usually a guy thing. But Jordan said in the further hate mail replies I got from her that she's a woman. Anyway, compare that email from the previous episode with this email from Colin. You could argue that, they're both Satanists who both wrote to me and expressed a rejection of certain left-wing ideologies, but that's about where the similarities end. Colin's email said, hey, this is an essay I wrote. I'd like to get your opinion on my essay. It's below. I have some strong political opinions as a Satanist, namely against left-wing authoritarianism. I'm not presenting this to say being left-wing demands some kind of satanic rebuttal. I just see some parallels between that kind of far-left ideological thinking and, ironically, the far-right religious thinking. So he states his case. It's humble, it's not accusatory, but compare that whole approach to the email I read in the previous episode from Jordan. Paraphrase said, I was thinking of joining the Church of Satan, but I think the organization has publicly supported too many left things, and to prove it, I used ChatGPT to skim one article that I couldn't be bothered to read and comment on myself. I'm such a keen detective that I know that that's what the Church of Satan is doing, and you better change it, or else you'll miss out on having me as a member. Yeah, that was basically the gist of the email I got and I read in the previous episode. Now, really, I think the differences of these two approaches kind of speaks volumes, Colin's approach versus Jordan's approach. So in closing, I want to read a short essay I wrote almost exactly 5 years ago today. It was inspired by seeing Satanists with not only different views on politics and other topics, but some mistakenly thinking that because we all share the same philosophy and agree fundamentally on what Satanism is, and all agree with the Satanic Bible, that we all somehow have to come to the same conclusions about politics and everything else in life, as if there's no room for more than one view on these topics. And again, this isn't the same thing as arguing that Satanism itself can be anything you want it to be. It's not. We have some objective parameters on what Satanism is and isn't. If we did not, the term would be meaningless. Anton LaVey was the first to structure an actual religion and philosophy calling itself Satanism, so that's the standard. I've talked much more extensively about this in other episodes, but let's continue. Two people can share the same religion and still have different views and behaviors when it comes to other things. And this gets more into what I'm talking about in this essay. So here is the essay. The analogy I offer is not a perfect analogy, but here it is. Let's close with this. Of Parties and Party by Magister Bill M. Whenever I see disgruntled ex-members accusing the Church of Satan of being left-wing bleeding hearts, I can click over to Twitter or some new Antifa blog and see other equally disgruntled ex-members accusing the Church of Satan of being right-wing Nazi fascists. People desperate to believe in the former will focus only on some of our left-leaning members. People desperate to believe the latter will focus only on some of our right-leaning members, including calling out yours truly. Obviously, these two camps of detractors can't both be correct, but they can both be incorrect. There are certainly some fellow Church of Satan members I cannot stand, and I mean Satanists whom I thoroughly dislike on a personal level. They're not doing anything definitively against organizational policy, which would get them rightfully booted, such as highly illegal activity, harming children, or supporting LaVey-bashing rival groups. But they're people whose words always make my eyes roll, or just regularly rub me the wrong way, politically or otherwise, to the point where they're not even worth debating. When that happens, there are several things I certainly do not do. I do not outright accuse them of somehow not being real Satanists. Satanism is a self-serving religion, so it's inevitable that different Satanists will find different efforts supporting their respectively different needs. I also do not accuse these members of being somebody that Dr. LeVay wouldn't have tolerated. I never met the man, so I can't say. More importantly, I see the historical evidence of the Church of Satan having always had a mix of countless sorts of eclectic and straight-laced individuals. If I have a mutual friend with this disliked person, I don't demand that the friend pick a side. I don't scorn that mutual friend for choosing to support the projects or works of this person I dislike. Satanists seem to have a mutual understanding of this idea that you can be friends with Satanist A and enemies with Satanist B, yet not really care if A and B are friends. Likewise, I don't play Karen and go whining to the Church of Satan central office every time I run into a member I dislike, demanding that they reprimand him or her. And I do not call out the disliked Church of Satan member by name and bash them in public. When you air dirty laundry in public, all that accomplishes is pleasing the flies and the lot lice. No, when I run into some Church of Satan member online whom I can't stand, I simply unfollow, unfriend, or unblock that person on social media. Maybe I will write a counterpoint essay to express my biggest opposing viewpoint and why I propose it's equally justified under Satanism. But otherwise, I move on with my life. Why this simple ignore and carry on formula eludes some people, I don't know. Then again, the people who never think of it as an option are usually the same people I have blocked, so I can no longer read what they're saying anyway. I liken the Church of Satan membership to being at a good party. Most of the undesirables are thankfully not allowed inside the party in the first place. But you walk around the party, you have nods and brief greetings with some people, then invariably you find a small circle at the party, and you end up having a closer kinship with the people in that circle. Other circles of other people are likewise talking about other things. You may find yourself engaged in another circle after a few hours. Or hell, you can be at the party and choose not to mingle at all. You can choose to be a wallflower. You can sit alone in the corner of the room with a book or a sketch pad the whole night. I've seen people who go to parties and do that. Granted, they're not going to get laid that night, and the party would be pretty lame if everybody was a wallflower and didn't engage with anybody. But hey, it's still an option. It's still another way for somebody to be at a party and enjoy themselves. Now, can anything wrong happen at a party? Can anything go wrong? Well, even a really, really good party, yeah, that may happen, especially when you have a lot of people together having fun. But whether the occasional bad incident is detrimental to my enjoyment of the party on the whole is another story. I will alert the party host if I see a drunk guest breaking the stereo, but I'm not going to whine to the party host if I get into an argument with another guest, because then the host will rightfully say to me, look, you're a grown-up, deal with it. I have more important things to deal with. If somebody is breaking stuff or is really being an asshole to everybody, well, that's another story, and yeah, I'll check it out, thanks. Otherwise, Bill, it's not my concern. Just stop talking to that person and go hang out with somebody else here. Susie, she's over there by the bar. You two get along. Go stop and say hi to her. Likewise, I am not going to dismiss the whole party as bad just because one person I disliked showed up, or because one person ended up doing something irresponsible, like puking in the second floor hallway. No, I just move around at the party and go mingle somewhere else. What sort of people would end up dismissing a great party as a terrible party? Some may naively judge the entire party based on their bad interaction with one or two guests. Other people may have come to the party expecting to be the center of attention and got mad when that didn't happen. Perhaps some may have been so narcissistic as to think the entire party should have been catered specifically to please them. Or they saw the word party and thought it meant Tupperware party, with the false expectation that all the other party attendees will give them their undivided attention as the main attraction. Maybe some arrived and mistakenly expected the booked event to be a protest rally, and are mad that people aren't treating it like that. I find that the people who are most vocal about calling a good party a terrible party are those who got kicked out of the party for being intolerable jack-offs. Whether they were kicked out or left the party on their own, their departure from the party wasn't a loss. If anything, their departure made the party more enjoyable for the rest of the guests. Still, others may claim the party sucked because they were denied entry in the first place, or they never even tried to get into the party. Maybe they just hate seeing other people enjoying themselves. They then may even try to find ways of rationalizing their social ineptitude as being some sort of superior quality. I'm more rebellious and free-spirited and independent than those people are at the party, which makes me a true outsider to the outsiders. No, more likely you're just socially retarded and were kicked out of the party for being an insufferable prick to other guests. Well, in any case, I am certainly still having a good time at this party, and I know I'm helping some others have a good time here too. And if you are at this party as well, I'm the fellow in yellow chatting in the far right corner of the room. Feel free to stop and say hello, maybe talk longer, or maybe just take a selfie and mingle elsewhere. In any case, enjoy the party. And that concludes my little essay of parties and party. Thank you again for listening. Hail Satan.
You have been listening to Satansplain. For more information about the show, visit the official website at Satansplain.com. And for more information about Satanism itself, visit churchofsatan.com. This episode, copyright 2025, Magister Bill M.